Hello and welcome to the beginning of the College of Functional Wellness Open Day. And I am delighted to be joined by Shania Lee from Nordic Laboratories here in the UK. I say here in the UK, I'm in Spain, so. And we are going to have this amazing discussion today about lab testing. And this is as part of functional kinesiology, which is something that we offer as part of the college, and also functional wellness coaching. Lab testing is something that we offer as part of the training. It can be a really nice addition to practitioners really understanding what is going on for their clients. And so Shania is kind enough to have put together a presentation for us. So I'm going to hand you over to Shania, and then afterwards we'll do a few questions, and I've got some questions for you. I want to understand a little bit more about what you offer and who it's for, and how practitioners can use this as part of their clinics.
Okay, perfect. Well, let me get started by sharing my screen. See that all right?
Wonderful. Go for it.
Great. Well, I'll tell you my history with Nordic Laboratories. I'm from South Africa and studied functional medicine from 2008 onwards. But one of the things that we had as an issue being at the bottom end of Africa was shipping samples to the various laboratories. So it was the shipping prices exceeded the costs of the lab fees. So it was like pricing us out of actually doing any of the lab testing. And then Nordic Laboratories came along and said, well, we'll help you. And the shipping prices were, I think, £17 to ship a kit. And yeah, I started using them in 2012 as a practitioner. And then I moved to the UK in 2016 and I joined them as practitioner support because I have about 20 years of experience in this industry. And obviously a lot of it is functional testing. And it's quite new in the UK. It's a growing field. It's very exciting to have new people coming on board because it is a growing field. It grows very quickly in the countries that pick it up. So anybody who decides to join up will be joining a growing field, which is exciting. You know, it's not one of those where you'll join and it'll fizzle out eventually.
That's one of the great things about working in this industry, isn't it? Is that it is fast moving because it is so new, and new understanding and new ways of being able to test and learn about the body are coming through all the time. I see the clinical trials that are coming through that they're eye-opening. They go, oh my God, this is, I'm looking at the way that the body works in a completely different way. So it's
absolutely. And what's beautiful about the functional medicine paradigm is that there's space for any practitioner. And what I mean by that is you have your general practitioners who are good at diagnosing diseases and finding various things pathologically wrong with you. But then there's also the coaches and the nutritional therapists. And actually the clinics that we see doing the best are ones that have an integrated approach. They have a physical worker on board who will be able to do manipulations and things like that. They have a psychologist on board. They have a nutritional therapist. They have a health coach. So within this field, it's not like the doctors own everything like they have in the past when it comes to health. They're part of a team now, which is fantastic. And it means that people who are at the point of changing careers and whatnot don't have to go and study for 12 years to get to where they want to be. They can do something and still contribute, which is pretty amazing. And the whole aspect of it is personalized medicine and a spectrum of people involved in it, which is fantastic.
I think what's exciting about how we work, because we are functional kinesiologists, is that's exactly our approach, is that we look at the nutritional side, but we're also looking at the physical side and doing those manipulations to get the body back into an alignment. And we're also able to do the coaching and the emotional work, because then you're looking at this whole spectrum, because people we have these different parts of ourselves, and we can get quite narrow-minded where we're just looking at nutrition. I know that's how I started off, is that I was like, it's all diet, my symptoms are all diet. And when I really got underneath, I got the diet piece in place, and then I was like, oh my God, look at all this emotional work.
Yep, it's pretty cool watching doctors and nutritional therapists create things together, because both of them have aha moments that they didn't know something, because none of us know everything. That's why we work in teams. But yeah, it's not all one thing, it's multiple things working together. So this is one of the things that I like to show people about working with Nordic Laboratories is that we are global. So we're based in 60 different countries. I think we have more people speaking different languages in one company than I've ever seen in my life before, because we have people from Asia, we have people in Australia, we have people in all the Nordic countries, we have people in South Africa, in Canada, all over, which is pretty cool, which means if you are working with someone online, which we are nowadays, you're not inhibited by location, which you can be with other people. We also focus on training and handholding and education. So, you know, we're not going to just throw a bunch of test names at you and expect you to know them and do them all yourself. We do actually have a full portal of training that people can do at home and then practice with their clientele. Here are more reasons, but I'll skip to the next one because it's just too many things to read out.
Oh, here's a great reason.
It's just
this is why we do what we do.
So those are all the reasons that you want to work with us. But one of the
real reason.
One of the good things about Nordic Laboratories is they have a range of non-invasive tests. Now, non-invasive means you don't need to get a phlebotomist and lab equipment and things like that in order to get the information that you need. And you also don't have to inflict that on people, because people are afraid of needles. You know, you've got to remember all of these things when you're prescribing tests. So you can do non-invasive, completely non-painful. So we can test hair, saliva, blood spots. They do have to prick their own finger though. Urine test, stool samples. So all of these things can be done by the patient in their own home. Fantastic. So, you know, you don't have to be involved in it. And then you get access to the results and you can work with them with those results. So I just wanted to show a couple of examples. This is an example of one of the genetic tests that we have. It's called DNA Health. We've got 11 different profiles. This was one of the first ones launched in about 2008. And it looks at biological area. So if somebody comes in and they've got issues, genetically, this person is more prone to inflammation and oxidative stress.
Here what kind of test was this again? Sorry, this is a
genetic test. So it's a swab that they do. And basically, if you're looking at the area, in other words, you don't have to know anything about any of these things. I mean, it's good to know something, but you can go, okay, look, inflammation and oxidative stress are important. So a good anti-inflammatory diet that has lots of colorful fruit and vegetables, it's a basic place to start. And anybody can do that, from the layperson all the way through. So there is a lot more information in the reports, and we do offer training. So if you do want to understand what all of this code on this side means, because it really does, it looks like code, but it means something to the trained eye. But yeah, you know, you don't need to be trained to see that inflammation and oxidative stress are genetically a predisposition that this person has for issues.
And through our training, because these tests are so simple to read, and like you said, you don't need to understand the very technical side of it, but from our practitioner's point of view is that they're able to look at the summary and go, okay, I know what I'm dealing with. And our courses in functional wellness and functional kinesiology give the practitioner the tools to know what recommendations need to be focused on.
Exactly. Now this little test, I'm not going to show you all of it because it's usually about 20 pages long. It's called metabolomics. It's an at-home test that looks at urine and blood spot, and it looks at all the main nutritional needs that a person has. And again, it makes it really easy to read. You know, green is something that's low priority, yellow is medium priority, and red is where you really need to focus your attention on with this person. So in these results, it's toxic exposure, which is common these days. You know, we unfortunately live in a fairly toxic environment wherever we are these days. But yeah, this person might also have fatigue based on their mitochondrial dysfunction. So you can take all of these results and formulate a bespoke nutritional plan, and later on in it, they actually give you an idea of what nutrients and how many and how much to give to the person. So it's quite super easy to use. And you don't need to have a biochemistry background to start using it. If you're already practicing something in a wellness industry, you're already on the path to being able to understand these. You know, they're very easy. This looks almost identical, but it's the stool version of it. So this is a GIFX. And again, you know, if somebody's got 10s, that's immediately where you're going to focus your attention, right?
This person has TENS in an infection, inflammation, and dysbiosis. Am I reading that right?
That's correct. This person
Yeah.
has
So from our perspective, because our modules are broken down to blood sugars, hormones, stress, digestion, I'd definitely be looking at the digestive work, and we also do immune systems. So, you know, looking at how we support the body with infection and inflammation.
absolutely. And I mean, remember that 70% of your immune system is in your gut. So
Yeah.
if it's taxed in the gut, it's going to be taxed elsewhere in the body as well. So yeah, this person would require quite a workup. This is just an example of a different form of a stool test called the GI map. And it's basically looking at genetic fragments of things to find pieces of bacteria. In this case, this person has C. diff, which is a pretty unpleasant bacteria to have. So they would get their specific treatment based on these results. So I'm going to go into specifically focusing on Dutch testing, and Dutch stands for Dried Urine Test of Comprehensive Hormones. So we can test hormones through blood, saliva, and urine. But this is one of the ways where we look not just at the levels of the hormones, but the metabolites, because sometimes metabolites can be more harmful than hormones being in excess, if that makes any sense. So I'll show you what I mean in a moment. So it gives a complete hormone picture. It looks at the steroidal hormones. In other words, those are the ones made out of cholesterol. So it's cortisol, it's estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but it does look at a couple of other things as well. So androgen, so that's your male sex hormones, your female sex hormones, cortisol and cortisone, which is the inactive form of cortisol. So it's a good idea to see exactly what your body is doing with all those stress hormones. So this is a fantastic way to assess that. And then it also looks at organic acids, which are things that look at how you're utilizing B12, B6, how you're breaking down neurotransmitters. It does look at melatonin, which is your sleepy hormone, but it's also a potent antioxidant, so it's good for assessing oxidative stress as well. And then this marker, which is 8-hydroxydeoxyguanosine, and that's a marker of DNA damage. So we can see, are you at risk for developing nasties in your later life? This very simple picture is the steroidal hormone pathway, and I expect everybody to recite it back to me ad nauseum.
Isn't it wonderful? I mean, hormones are so fascinating, and part of the training that we offer is making this kind of thing a little bit more simple for the practitioner to use, because I am fascinated with it, and the way that the body is able to prioritize different hormones at different times. But when you're first learning this can be a bit like, wow, what's the body up to?
I mean, it looks like a lot now looking at it with the eyes of someone who's never seen it before, it is quite overwhelming. What does it all mean? But what it is basically you're looking at the mother hormone, and the pathways go in a direction. So you follow the arrows to see where things should be happening, and where they're not, you can see if they're lower than they should be, you can see why, and if they're higher than they should be, you can see why, and then you can fix those things in the full pathway. So I mean, yeah, it's crazy when you look at it like this, but it makes sense once you've done a few thousand, I can promise you.
And also when you've done the training, this is the thing, is that
exactly.
When you actually do the practitioner training and you're able to break this down in the classroom, then it does make so much more sense. And what do you do with it? That's the other thing that a good practitioner will be able to work with.
Exactly. So I'm going to show a very quick case study. A woman, 42, generally healthy, but she suddenly gained weight, as people tend to do in their 40s, but she started to develop other symptoms that were unrelated to age, such as getting pain in her joints, very, very heavy menstrual bleeding. She'd started to develop a cough, even though she wasn't a smoker. So she'd wake up in the morning with this wet cough. She was getting brain fog and fatigue and headaches, just generally not feeling well. She had noticed that there was a bit of mold growing around her as well. So yeah, this pattern, believe it or not, is super common in women these days. And there are many reasons. It could be perimenopause, it could be the mold, it could be a number of different things. And what the testing does is it sort of guides you in the direction of finding what that root cause is, because that's what we do in functional medicine. We don't treat the symptoms alone. We try to find the root cause. We want to, you know, I describe it to people as if my pot plant in the background there started to die, would I paint it green to make it look good? Or would I water it and nourish its soil? I'm probably going to go with the latter, right? I'm not going to be painting my
Poor
plants.
plant.
and we're just complicated pot plants. You know, we need sunshine, water, oxygen, and all the same things. And yeah, if we're not thriving, and she's obviously not thriving, if we're not thriving, then we need to look at what's nourishing us and what's not nourishing us. So this is just a snapshot of a different DNA test where I was looking at her potential for issues with estrogen detoxification, because I am looking at perimenopause, and I am thinking, is it toxic exposure to the mold? Is it the fact that she's just getting older, et cetera, et cetera? So anything.
This is absolutely what I would have been looking at as well, is what's going on with that estrogens, the signs such as the weight gain and the fatigue and the headaches. Is there something going on with estrogen?
Absolutely. There's definitely something going on with estrogen, but we still don't know why. And this one here with the 2 dots, this one is the one that creates that toxic metabolite that we're so worried about in perimenopausal women, especially because this metabolite actually damages your DNA. So I paid attention to that. This one here is the glutathione conjugation enzyme. So there's issues with detoxification. So if she is exposed to a toxicant, she'll have more of an issue getting rid of it than, say, somebody who doesn't have that. She also has homozygous for MTHFR. So there's potential issues with methylation, which is also very important for keeping your DNA healthy, but also creating and breaking down neurotransmitters. I mean, methylation is involved in every single cell in our body for every reason. So there's a bit for me to look at there. And this was her Dutch test. And just for people who've never seen it before, essentially these are like volume dials. And what you're looking at is between the yellow stars would be within range, be it low or high. Anything above and in the red is too high. So her estradiol is very high. I mean, its upper limit is 4.5 and she's at 6.57. So already we're looking at high estrogen on this particular time of the month. She ovulated, so progesterone is there. However, progesterone is the balancer of estrogen, and there's not enough to balance out the estrogen. So estrogen is going to be doing all the things that it does so well, a little too well, which is, you know, proliferative. So she'll gain weight, she'll bleed more heavily. There is also excessive testosterone. I mean, it's quite high. Some women are just naturally high in testosterone. Others are high thanks to insulin resistance or blood sugar disorders. And what we do is we look at this and go, okay, do you have symptoms? Are you losing your hair like a man would? Or are you growing hair like a man would? Because then it's something we need to address. If there are no symptoms, then testosterone can just be ignored for that moment in time. Then we have our cortisol. And the daily pattern should be a little bit higher than what is here. So this is a little bit flat. Now she has said she's fatigued, right? And you can see her free cortisol is on the low side. So free cortisol is about the 1% that we have available to us that actually does stuff. So cortisol wakes you up, by the way, in case you don't know. So if you've got very low free cortisol, you're going to feel like you need to wake up all day. DHEA is another adrenal hormone, and she's way above where she should be. And what's interesting about her adrenal glands is she's got very low free cortisol, but quite high metabolized. And this is telling us that actually the adrenal glands are pumping out quite a lot of cortisol, but something's happening so that it's bound and not made available. And usually we'll see this pattern in people who are on thyroid medication. That's the dose is a little too high, so they're actually removing the cortisol faster than they should. Or often in obesity, and she wasn't excessively, she gained weight, but she wasn't like horribly overweight. But we also see it in inflammation, and she was getting those aches and pains. So it was a very interesting cortisol pattern to pick up in the test. Here we get to see the breakdown products. So we have 3 types of estrogen, estradiol being the most active, and it breaks down into estrone. And then we have these 3 metabolites. So green is good, Blue is good and bad depending on where it's at, and red is just bad. Okay, we don't want red. And we can also take a look at the percentages in this pie chart, and you'll see her percentage. Not only is her 4 high, it's very high in the percentages. It's 16.2, and we want it under 11. So you'll see it creates these things called quinones, and a little bit further down, you'll see a piece of DNA, and it's attaching to that, and basically just breaks the DNA and makes it more prone to being oxidized. So this is not a healthy pattern of detoxification. Okay, so definitely things we need to address. 16 in her case was contributing to the fact that she was actually developing fibroids. Those fibroids were the cause of her heavy bleeding. Okay, so this would be the contributing factor behind the fibroids. And here's her, more of her cortisol, and you'll see that what we do, we look at these two, and the idea is to see if they match, do they look the same, and they don't. This one is off the charts, and this one is very low. Now, what's happening with the body is it's taking this cortisol, that there's plenty of it, but it's inactivating it. It's switching the switch over to inactive. So not being functional, in other words, useless, right? That's not something we want to do. So luckily we can do things to change that. We can slow down the enzyme that does that. So that's obviously what I did with her. And these are the organic acids. This one was alarming to me. This pyroglutamate is telling me that she needs glutathione, and this is probably one of the highest numbers I've seen. And I know that she's got a SNP, you know, the missing gene. So in other words, she doesn't make the enzyme anyway. But it also says to me that maybe there is a massive toxic exposure, and her melatonin being on the low end is also telling me potentially oxidative stress. So I haven't shown all of the tests that I did with her, but I did do microtoxin testings, and she came out positive for one that looks and acts exactly like estrogen. So it was a massive contributor to her. So hers was the exposure to this microtoxin, which was acting like estrogen, but also her poor inability to deal with estrogen anyway. So it was like a double whammy of the estrogen pathways.
Yeah.
So I got her onto a program for 4 months, and all of the numbers have improved. This was just a bizarre pattern. I mean, thankfully she's now got free cortisol, but what she was doing with it during the day on that day was all over the place. So up and downs all over. But why I was excited about this follow-up is that all the numbers had improved. So I was like, yay, we're definitely moving in the right direction. It is going to take a little bit of time, but moving in the right direction. But most importantly was her 4-hydroxy was now safe. So she'd gone from being in a place of danger and high risk for nasty, nasty things to being safe, and all in the space of 4 months. And also
I'm conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes, and I'd like to take some questions from some of the potential students. But one of the questions I've got is, how much was all this testing that you did with your client?
This test costs around £260.
Great.
But
great. I think
I
it's
can tell you now,
fascinating.
People are not concerned about costs of tests if they're sick. That's something that I've noticed with people who are sick. They will spend money on tests to find out what the cause is.
Absolutely, and good quality tests as well. And what's amazing about the testing is that you're able to get a very clear picture. It looked a bit, if you're a lay person, it can look a bit complicated, but this is the point of going into a practitioner training that can teach you how to read these tests. And then when you've got the results, what to do with it, because at our process, we've got a very structured way of working with hormones. So we get the blood sugars and the diet in place first, and then we start looking at the adrenal stress, what are the stressors, and then we want to get the hormones and the digestive picture in place before we can start looking at that deep detoxing picture that you were talking about, the glutathione. Because if you haven't got things like the diet in place and you don't have digestion working, then it makes the liver's job so much harder to be able to do its job. So it's about choosing a practitioner training that is able to give you the tools to be able to do these tests, understand them, and then to make the advice that's going to make the changes, right?
Exactly. No point in running the tests if you can't give good advice based on them.
Exactly. So I'm going to stop recording now so that we can take some questions from our audience.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Shania. That is fascinating. I have so many questions going on in my head. Recording.